Hello and welcome to Become the Teapot. I'm Iain.
And I'm Batman.
Every time. Every damn time. This is the podcast about comic books and their film adaptations. Each episode we watch one film, read the comic that it's based on, and then have a big old bloody chat about it. This episode, to celebrate the release of Robert Pattinson's first outing as Batman in the imaginatively titled The Batman, we thought we'd go back and revisit one of the Dark Knight's previous films.
Yep, so this week we're watching Val Kilmer's first and only Batman film, Batman Forever.
No, we're not.
Sorry, right, no, I meant to say we're watching George Clooney's first and only Batman film, Batman and Robin.
No. Again, wrong. We're going to be rounding off the Christopher Nolan trilogy with The Dark Knight Rises.
Oh, is that the one with the Riddler?
No, it's the one with Bane.
So, Batman and Robin?
No!
I'm pretty sure Bane was in that film.
Well, yes, but, I mean, that wasn't really Bane. Not like he is in the comics, anyway.
Ah, I see. Say, Iain, if I wanted to learn more about Bane, where should I start?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Iain, because the comics we're reading for today's episode are the first 12 issues of the Knightfall story arc, which features the infamous Breaking of the Bat.
What luck! Well, now that all this banter is all out of the way, let's get started.
Right, so Iain, I'm going to take a lead out of James's book from last episode and actually set up the film this time. So The Dark Knight Rises is a 2012 film, Christopher Nolan's third Batman film after Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. It features Christian Bale's Batman, still suffering from the loss of Rachel Dawes in the last film, coming up against a new villain, Tom Hardy's Bane. That's the preamble out of the way. What did you think of it?
What, the film or the preamble?
Both.
I'm going to answer it as the film.
Okay.
We spoke a few weeks back about sequelitis and how bigger is supposed to be better. In this, I feel like they said more is better. For example, in the last film, there was one bat car, and in this film, there's a whole city full. And they just seem to be piling in characters left, right, and centre.
Yeah, there's a lot of characters in here, yeah. But overall, did you enjoy it, or...?
Yeah, no, as a film and as a conclusion to his world that he's created, I did enjoy it. It's an enjoyable film. There's a lot there, but it works in this universe and as a sort of conclusion to this particular Bruce Wayne.
Absolutely. You're echoing my sentiments exactly there. So I'll be honest with you, I'm going to have a little confession here. If I've seen a film before, I will often start writing my notes before watching it again for this podcast. I know. So that's what I started doing here, and I vaguely remembered being a bit disappointed by this film, so being a bit underwhelmed by it. So I started writing all these notes. I think I called it a bloated mess with good elements is how I came up with it. But then I watched it again, and I genuinely think I was wrong. It's actually a pretty good film. It's better than I remember it being.
Yeah.
Yes, it's overly long and overstuffed. I still think it's the weakest of the trilogy, but as a conclusion to Nolan's films, there's something extremely satisfying about this as an ending.
Yeah. There's online for years there's been, will he create a fourth film? Which I don't think he will.
No.
People asking to create a film about Robin or maybe Nightwing. But again, you don't need it. You don't want to... Well, I don't want them to adapt this film into a wider world. I think it works perfectly fine as 3 films.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with you there that prior to watching it again, I think, oh, here we go, an almost 3-hour film.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Like, I've got to properly work out when I will watch this film. It's not just a film that you put on in the evening at some point. You go, right, I need to set aside almost 3 hours to watch this film that I have seen before.
Yeah.
Even though this time, again, this is one of those films that I own that it was on my shelf and still in the plastic kind of film. But I've seen it probably, I'd say about 5 times roughly. I can't think exactly how many, but a fair few times.
I think this is the 3rd time I've watched it. So I think I've seen it once in the cinema, once out of the cinema, and then now. So yeah, I've not seen it a great deal. But it has a lot of great elements to it as a film. I think most of the performances are excellent, as you'd expect from this cast. The practical stunts are well executed. The aeroplane scene at the beginning, incredibly well realised aerial set piece. The fight scenes with Batman and Bane, are very good, very frantic and aggressive. About as aggressive as you can get in a PG-13 film anyway. There were some of the other fight scenes were a bit rubbish. If you watch the Batman Catwoman fight scene where they're fighting those people on the roof, you'll just see there's people in the background just throwing themselves on the floor for no reason. I was like, what's going on? Like, there's a guy who sort of runs up towards Batman and then just throws himself backwards, but he's about a metre away from him. It's like, well, that's...
I'm pretty sure as well, there is a guy in the background that just falls over.
Yeah.
It's in this, 10 things you missed in a film, whatever, online. And a guy just falls over for no reason.
Yeah, that's the one. He does that, and I'm like, what's going on? Why has that made it into the film? And there's a weird cut later on where Batman's fighting someone, and clearly the stunt didn't go right, so it cuts back to Robin's face, and then cuts back to Batman having beaten up this guy. But yeah, I mean, a couple of things like that, and the annoying comedy cops that Nolan puts in every single one of this trilogy. I hate them.
Yeah.
They're not funny. Stop giving random cops one-liners about Batman. Awful. But yeah, apart from that...
What was the one in this film? The guy's like, oh, son, you're in for a treat tonight.
Yeah, that's the one.
Or something.
And then he shoots it and apologises or something. He's like, get back
to be fair, I did laugh at that because, he's clearly a new cop or whatever, and he's not ever seen the Bat. And he just shoots and like, oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, I got the joke. I just didn't think it was funny. And there's a lot like that in here where I'm just like, you can take those bits out. In fact, there's a lot going on in this film, like you say. You could have lost one of the plot elements and I think it would have worked fine. I don't know what you would do, but...
Yeah, I was thinking about this, whilst typing up my notes and thinking about all the characters and all the plots. In my head, I was thinking, you could take out Catwoman in this, not have her as a character, but then how would you end the film with that little sequence in France or wherever they were, in Europe?
Somewhere. Florence, I think.
But then again, if she wasn't there, then he could have got on his own, so it would have worked as well. But I guess you kind of need her.
Yeah, I kind of think they wanted to have a satisfying conclusion. And obviously you need Bane, because he's the main villain. You need Talia al Ghul for the twist, as it were. Although maybe that would... I don't think you necessarily needed to tie in the League of Shadows and everything into the Bane storyline. So maybe you could have streamlined that whole thing. Maybe lose the bit about all the cops going underground and getting sealed there because it makes them look like complete idiots. I don't know.
And it's stupid.
Yeah, there's probably some trimming you could do. But I think by this point, obviously the second one being such a big hit, sort of Nolan was just given carte blanche to do what he wanted, really. But yeah, so I think aside from those little bits... I think it's well-rounded and ties up a lot of loose ends, probably more than it should have had to tie up because they threw so much in here, but it's pretty good. And I really like how the entire climax for this Nolan trilogy of films is the 1960s Batman scene where he's trying to get rid of a bomb. And he's sort of running around with this giant round bomb above his head. And it's like, Nolan took massive inspiration from that and thought, that's how I'm going to wrap things up.
Yeah, I do like his approach to these films, and especially this one as well. He does take a lot of artistic liberties with turning this into his film.
Yeah.
He takes a lot of inspiration from the comics, from the shows, all of the stuff, and then folds it into a world that he's made.
Yeah.
So I understand that he needs to do that for the plot to make it make sense, and the characters as well, because if you just took, I don't know, the Joker from page to screen like it was created in the 60s, it's not going to work in this real kind of world that he's made.
No, and this is what he does pretty well throughout the trilogy, is just adapt things to his Gotham City.
Yeah.
We talked a bit in The Dark Knight how some of the flavour of Gotham City had gone a bit. I felt like it was just any other American city, whereas in Begins it seemed to have its own sort of, it had the monorail thing, it had the Narrows and all these little locations that were distinctly Gotham, which definitely got lost from the sequels. But I like how he will still reference the comic book but put a new twist on things and a more realistic, as it were, twist. I say realistic in inverted commas, definitely, because, let's face it, there's a guy dressed as a clown and a bat and they're all running around punching each other. So it's not realistic, it's just more grounded, perhaps.
Yeah. One thing that, as I said, he does take these artistic liberties because he kind of has to, in a way.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I don't like is, here you go, this is an element that he could have not had in there, is Blake becoming or being implied that he's going to take on the mantle, and his first name being Robin. I don't like that. It's either, was it Tim, Jason, or Dick? mean, that's just because I am quite true to the comics when it comes to certain characters, and I think, you know, if his name is Robin, and then he goes out on the streets and fights crime, and his name is also the same thing, 2 and 2, you know.
I don't think the message there was that he was going to go out and fight as Robin. I think the idea being that it was just, here is Batman's successor.
Yeah.
Here's the guy who's going to follow on to be Batman. He's his sort of ward, as it were. Well, not his ward, but he is Robin, essentially. You know, but that's in this instance is a name rather than, because it wouldn't make sense for this version of Batman to have a small boy follow him around and help him fight crime. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah, be a bit odd.
I think the idea is that he is just going to be the successor of Batman. He's going to pick up the mantle.
Yeah, it's fine. Just don't have the little name drop right at the end. Actually, they added post-production.
Oh, really?
You don't see the person, whoever it is, hands over those files. It's not on screen that she says his name. So she came into a booth and she dubbed it over after they'd filmed it.
Yeah, which is audio replacement is quite a common thing. But yeah, I suppose that's just a little Easter egg. Your favourite thing. I thought you would have bloody loved it. Just as a little...
it time for Easter eggs?
No, it's not. No, it bloody well isn't. But yeah, I give it a pass. I think it's as much a liberty as a lot of other things, and it more echoes what happens in the Knightfall arc afterwards with Jean-Paul Valley taking on the mantle of Batman afterwards, whilst Bruce Wayne is recuperating from his broken back.
We'll get on to that.
We'll come back to that.
Because I've got questions about Jean-Paul, but I'll ask you in a bit.
Oh God, I'm not going to be able to answer those questions. I know next to nothing about Jean-Paul Valley.
But on the topic of Robin, the first interaction that they have, I think, is great. It's the best way of someone to tell someone else, in this case, he knows that he's Batman, and to get him off his arse and actually go out into the world and become human again and, you know, help.
Yeah.
The script, the interaction, the relationship between those two, I think it's perfect. I think that's how you introduce this Blake character to this world and to Bruce as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's pretty well done. Maybe, actually, Blake is the one thing you potentially could cut without losing too much if you just sort of consolidated that into other cops, such as Gordon. And that I didn't like the fact that Gordon seemed to not know that Bruce Wayne was Batman at the end.
Yeah.
Because in the comics, it's always been this sort of, well, they go back and forth on it, but the idea being that Gordon does know, he's too good a cop not to know. But if he admits that he knows, then he doesn't have the plausible deniability to say he didn't.
Yeah.
And he would have to go and arrest him. So he doesn't. He keeps it to himself. But in this, they sort of had the last moment of Gordon in the film is him going, Bruce Wayne, and looking confused. Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, come on, you're better than that. Gary.
It's like the penny dropped.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean the huge penny that is kept in the Batcave.
It is indeed. As from an adventure with, is it called the Penny Pincher? We talked about this in one of our other episodes, I think.
We did,
Yeah.
but
You don't listen.
I don't remember what we spoke about last week. So, but no, yeah, talking about Gordon.
Yes.
He must know, but I guess, you know, right at the end, you need that for the audience. I don't know.
Maybe.
But then when Bruce is first coming back, I guess, he goes into the hospital, puts on a balaclava.
Yeah.
And he doesn't use his I'm Batman voice. To be fair, he's not trying to scare him, so I understand.
No.
But he's still talking like Wayne. And they've had enough interactions
Yeah.
to know that that's Wayne's voice.
And that's sort of a callback to the first time he broke into his office in Batman Begins, where he's wearing a balaclava and he holds a stapler to the back of his head. And he just used his normal voice in that scene. So I figured, yeah, like you say, they've had enough conversations by now. But it doesn't make any sense then why in some scenes he's still doing the whole... What?
He even does the stupid voice on his own. So he's talking to Selena Kyle and then she leaves.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh... That's what that feels like.
Yeah.
No one's here, mate. You're talking to yourself and no one's here.
I suppose maybe
Don't
he's
put the
in
voice
character.
on.
He's put on the Batman mask and he's a method actor, Batman.
And scene. Action. But yeah, anyway. I think we are just sort of trying to pick holes in a film that there's not that many holes to pick in.
No.
Pick of. Go into? I don't know.
No, I'm not trying really. I'm not really trying to pick holes. It's just things that you notice. If it was just us sitting here going, "Yeah, I really liked it. Yeah, me too," then that's not interesting. But hey, Iain, speaking of picking holes, let's talk about whitewashing. Hooray! So,
go on then.
We've talked about this before. We've danced around it a bit in our Batman Begins episode with Ra's al Ghul.
Mm-hmm. Which appears in this again.
That does crop up again in this, as does his daughter. And I sort of gave that a pass at the time because it's an amalgamation of Ra's and Henry Ducard, who's another character from the comics. But Let's talk about Bane, because there has been a lot of discussion about Tom Hardy's Bane.
Yeah.
And obviously in the comics, Bane is South American. He's from South America, a fictional South American country of Santa Prisa, I think it's called.
Yeah.
So that is a Latin American country. He should be therefore Latino or Latinx. I believe he's still white Latino, so maybe not whitewashing, but whatever it is. But obviously Tom Hardy is definitely not whatever he is. So well, I guess my question is, what do you think of Tom Hardy's performance here, and do you think he was the right choice for Bane?
See, I quite like it. To be fair, the subtitles did help. We watch films with subtitles on because Kate's pretty much deaf.
Right.
But again, going back to the way that these films are made and to be more kind of real, I think it works really well in this story. If you put this Bane in Batman and Robin, it wouldn't have made sense. It wouldn't have worked. It would just be stupid.
Yeah.
More stupid than that film is, I guess. But I can see why he chose him, because his figure and his appearance and the way he holds himself, it works really well. And yeah.
Yeah, because even though he's only about 5'8", he has that intimidating presence, doesn't he? And, you know, if you've seen the film Bronson, he looks very similar to that in this.
Yeah. Well, saying that, I still can't see that it's Tom Hardy. My brain won't let my eyes process that is Tom Hardy. I know it is.
Yeah.
I've been told it is. I've seen him on set, not personally. But I see it and I go, that's Bane. And I can't see it by his eyes going, that's Tom Hardy. I've not been able to.
That's because he hasn't got his luscious lips out. He's got them covered the whole time. Although there's that one bit right at the end where they show his face when he's in the prison. When he was younger, and you're like, that's Tom Hardy. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think it really affects the character portrayal that much. I know I'm not saying I'm a fan of characters being whitewashed.
No.
But I don't think it would have added anything if this guy was Hispanic or, from the country he was supposed to be in the comics.
Yeah. See, personally, I think Tom Hardy, I agree with you. I think he's very good in the role. I think he's imposing when he needs to be. He manages to convey a lot of emotion with just his eyes. He's also got the intelligence and a lot of humour, actually, to him.
Yeah.
I think the voice is a bold choice.
Yeah.
Haley was chuckling throughout the film. But I've learned it is inspired by a real figure, a British bare-knuckle boxer called Bartley Gorman.
Bartley Gorman, what a name.
Bartley Gorman, he used to call himself the King of the Gypsies.
Oh.
In fact, actually, his nephew is Bern Gorman, the actor, who was in this film.
Oh, yeah, Bernie. He's from
Torchwood. Yeah, absolutely. And he crops up in a lot of Guillermo del Toro films.
And he looks a bit like a frog.
All right, well, let's
a wide face.
Let's not start slating him, but all right.
Hey, I like the guy. I like Torchwood. It's just he's got a bit of a wide mouth.
So, yeah, I mean, I think the performance is very good. I think it works in this film. However, as much as I like the performance, nothing in Hardy's performance particularly screams comic book Bane to me. It is its own thing. So one day I would like to see a comic accurate interpretation of the character with a Latino actor in the role as intended. I would like to see that at some point.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit disappointed because obviously, as I said, they did have the intelligence to Bane. He wasn't just the dumb brute that you got in Batman and Robin, but he still ended up just being a number two, a lackey in this.
Yeah, that sort of twist that they sort of tried to pull off.
Yeah.
Which I think I was taken back a bit when I first saw it, but then seeing it again, I was like, oh, okay, well, I now know he's the number two, I guess. But yeah, I do like that they've still used the elements from the comic, the prison, it's not quite the same. And then he still has the same levels of fear by others that he does in the comic as well. Like as soon as someone hears his name, they are sort of scared.
Yeah.
Which is very similar. I'm not saying it's the same, but it's similar to the comic.
Yeah, except they gave his story, his origin story to Talia al Ghul for the reveal at the end. So,
yeah.
But I really like there's that scene for Intimidation where he just places his hand on that guy's shoulder and says, "Do you feel in control?" It's amazing.
Yeah,
scene.
I didn't. No, Bane, I don't. I'm sorry. Yeah, so we said about this being almost overstuffed with characters. Someone that I still love, because like I said I think it was Batman Begins, I said that Michael Caine's Alfred is chef's kiss.
Yes.
Which I still believe that is true in this. Even though we don't get a lot of him, I like his portrayal still. It's cheeky, it's emotional, and also he gives Wayne shit as well, like in the comics.
Yeah.
He doesn't just keep his piece to himself. He does say it, and we'll talk about this in the comic as well, but he does give shit to Batman in the comics and the films. And I think this is probably the best portrayal of Alfred that we've seen, I reckon.
I agree, yeah. I think he's really the heart of these films. He's the emotional centre of them. He brings that little quavering voice that Michael Caine uses a lot, but it's deployed to good effect here. And like you say, he's out of the film within the first hour, and it's nearly 3 hours long, this film. So he's not in it a lot, but he is the real tearjerker performance out of all of them here. At the end there, where he's saying how he failed the Waynes. That's an emotional moment, and yeah, he is very, very good. He's going to be a hard act to follow. I don't think Jeremy Irons was particularly great.
I did like him, but yeah, I liked him, but I don't think we saw enough of him and his interactions with Wayne. Don't know how, was it Andy Serkis is doing it next?
It is Andy Serkis, yeah, and he looks like he's doing a more action Alfred. So we'll see, what's going on there.
Savior of the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, something that you do see as well, obviously, when he then leaves, you've got Wayne on his own. And you really see that, he turns up to his house, doesn't have a key, because Alfred's always there. He's used to that happening.
Yeah.
Very quickly, just before we do move on to the comics, a man that I forgot was in this film is Lucius Fox, Bruce's handyman with the gadgets.
Yes.
Which, yeah, I completely forgot he was in it until he turned up and, oh yeah, I forgot that he's in these films. But just before we move on to comics, I've got a comic book question for you.
Okay.
It's not about this comic, but does his son, Luke Fox, become Batwing?
I believe so.
Like he does in Batwoman?
I think so, yes. I haven't read a lot of those comics. I've mostly read Batman himself. But yeah, I believe he does. He becomes a superhero of some description anyway.
Because I've watched the first season of that, and I think he does become that character in it. And there's a big thing about his dad was the sort of, not sidekick, but the handyman for Wayne.
He's the tech guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
Even though Batman's quite techie himself, but yeah.
The cue to his bond.
Yeah, that sort of dynamic. Quartermaster, perhaps.
Quartermaster. Oh, how posh of you.
Well, that's what the Q in Q stands for.
Never knew that. Never knew that. Right, anyway. Shall we speak about some artistically drawn Dark Knights?
We can indeed. So, Batman Knightfall, again, a quick summary to round things up so James doesn't get upset. Knightfall is the name of the story arc from the 1990s that is actually made up of 3 parts: Knightfall, Night Quest, and Night's End, which doesn't follow because that makes it sound like the word is Night's End, but no. Hold on. That makes it sound like the word is Nightsend, but it's not. It's Night's End.
The end of the nights.
Because it doesn't follow the same as the rest. Because the other ones are Nightfall and Night Quest, and then this should have been Night End, but it wasn't. It was Night's End. They threw an S in, so it makes me think that the name is Night Send. But it's not.
Right, okay. Your point being...
We're going to be focusing on just the first chapter of this event, which is also called Knightfall, or The Breaking of the Bat, I believe it's called. And it's made up of the 12 issues which went back and forth between Batman and Detective Comics at the time.
Yep.
The main focus of the story is the escape of the prisoners of Arkham as a plot by Bane in order to weaken Batman, so he works tirelessly to round them all up.
Yep.
And then ultimately, once he is exhausted physically and mentally, Bane breaks into his house and smashes his back.
The end.
When you get this iconic breaking of the bat scene where he sort of breaks him over his knee. That's the comic we're focusing on today, and obviously the film takes direct inspiration from it. But what did you think of Batman Knightfall?
Batman Knightfall. I bloody loved it. It is great to be back in the DC world. I think with this, I was very pleased with it. I mean, I'm not saying that I had low expectations, but reading it, well, also we did cover the Bane special as well.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to get some history about the characters. I didn't know any of that. But I do like that it seems to be like a blend of the old and the new. It's, like I said, it's in the 90s, so you don't have those huge paragraphs like you do in the 60s, and it's not as polished as the new stuff.
Yeah.
So you get that artwork again that is also fluid, but kind of grainy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, I think this is a good story to read, even if you just jump over the Bane special and go into just the first 12. It's a really good story overall, and you get a lot of information about a lot of characters. We said that the film is almost overstuffed, but not quite. This is very overstuffed, but it doesn't feel like that.
See, I knew you'd like this because you love an Easter egg, you love a cameo, you love having more of things you recognise in things.
Yeah.
So this, as a comic book, because it is essentially the first 11 of the 12 issues are just Batman going around the place and confronting all of his foes, essentially. Almost all of them turn up in some capacity. Actually, that's not true. He's got bloody loads. But a lot of them turn up in some capacity, and it's just sequence after sequence of him going around and vanquishing them, bringing them in. For me, the quality of these comics varies a little bit. I think as you're jumping back and forth between Detective Comics and Batman, some of the artwork suffers a little bit, perhaps from a rush schedule, I don't know. Some of it's a bit scrappy and a bit basic. A lot of the backgrounds are missing detail. But generally, it's quite good fun, isn't it? It's sort of... I like the gonzo mixture of some of those more outlandish villains. You know, Mad Hatter and the ventriloquist with Socko on his hand and the fake cop and things like that.
Yeah, and the duck as well.
Yeah, exactly. All of that stuff juxtaposed by this sort of serious, brooding Bane, I think works quite well.
When I was reading this, I did think it does feel like a bit of a game, like Arkham City, I think it is.
Yeah.
Because all of his rogues end up in town and they all cause havoc and all this sort of stuff. But it's very much like, right, this is the first level. You've got to go and get Victor Zsasz, for example. Right, cool. Now you've got him. You've got to go and get the Mad Hatter. Right, yeah, now you've got him. And it does kind of feel like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I tried to think about this. If I was to read this when it first came out, each week having an issue or two, I think I would have been so excited for the new one.
You would have been.
It works.
And I think it just follows on, because there's a couple of references to older plots as well that we didn't read. And it would have been you've just followed on from one major plot line to another, you know, so you would have come from this. So it was quite a big shake-up of the status quo, this breaking of the Batman and having someone else step into his place. I think, like you said with Arkham City there, yes, it probably takes direct inspiration from this. It's not necessarily unique to this. The other comic that the film takes inspiration from is a comic called No Man's Land, which is about an earthquake that makes Gotham, collapses the bridges around Gotham, makes it have to stand on its own. The government says basically you're on your own.
Yeah.
And so Gotham is carved up by all the things, and Batman is working his best to fight fires and take people in.
The only reason why I say there is because they did that story arc in Arrow season whatever. So I've not read that story, but I know about it.
Did they also do it in Gotham? I think I read they might have done it in Gotham at some point. Like later series.
See, I've watched all of Arrow and I've watched all of Gotham, and a lot of it just blends together. A lot of it, you just kind of think, oh, there's a guy in a mask and there's a town that's shit and he's fighting crime. I read
that they did it in series 4 of Gotham, and they also had a really dodgy looking Bane.
They did, yes, no, they did.
He looked like a cyberpunk from a bad 80s B movie. He looked awful. But yeah, I didn't watch any of it though, so I can't tell you anything about it. But so that's probably the inspiration, and that's the similar thing where you have all of the rogues gallery turning up, you've got to take them back in, and Batman's got to fight everyone one at a time.
Yeah.
It's tried and tested formula. It gets people reading it. It gets people going, oh, I recognise that person. Oh, I recognise that person.
Yeah.
And the good thing about Batman is he does have this wide rogues gallery to deal with. You know, Batman and Superman probably got the best rogues gallery in comic books. A lot of other characters, even Superman and people like that, don't have as good a...
Spider-Man?
Batman and Spider-Man have the best. Superman doesn't.
Right, sorry. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so like we said, there are a bunch of characters in here. I knew a fair few of them, some just by name, some from other media that I've seen. When I saw Detective Montoya come up, I know her from Gotham. And yeah, there's been games and shows and cartoons.
She's in a lot of things, yeah.
Yeah, but then there was a bunch of other characters that I didn't know who they were. There was Film Freak, someone Stirk or something. Amygdala? I don't know what his name is.
Amygdala.
Him, that's the one.
Yeah. There's a lot of fairly minor Batman villains here, and he makes a point of saying these were only my minor villains. I've not even got to the big ones like Joker and Scarecrow yet, and you get to them later on in the comic book. So yeah, the first few issues are him rounding up the relatively unknown junior ones, and people like the Mad Hatter and... well, he never actually gets the ventriloquist in this, does he?
No, but I was very pleased that he did find Scarface.
Oh, you shouldn't be.
I had this image that Scarface would just be like, it was in a box and it was burnt or whatever.
Well, if you do read on, you'll enjoy what comes next then.
Right, so we've spoke about the premise. We spoke about what kind of happens. should we talk about Bane? Because that is the main antagonist of the comic.
The main Bane. Let's do it.
Main Bane.
What do you think of the Bane we get here?
His plan, first of all, is bloody mental. The idea that he drops a bomb to free the Joker, then he drops a second one to cause havoc, and then just unloads a bunch of guns to this prison and goes, right, there you go, have your guns. There's a big hole in the wall. See ya. It's very similar to the film in a way that he wants to cause havoc to then become its leader.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was very pleased that I did. I almost was going to say convince you, but I didn't convince you. I just said it. That we read the special Bane to get his history. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed that a lot to understand the character, and I'm pleased that I did and not just jump straight into the story.
Yes, because he's not actually got much character in the 12 issues itself.
No, not really.
Every time you cut over to him, he's saying the same thing. It's like, I will break you, Batman, but first I've got to destroy you physically and mentally. I've got to destroy you. And he just keeps saying the same thing every time you cut back to him. It's like, okay, right, we get it, Bane. But that's because he was created just before this storyline, but he was created essentially for this storyline, essentially to be what Doomsday was for Superman.
Yeah.
So the man that breaks the bat, the man that kills Superman, or the thing that kills Superman. So he doesn't have much of a personality here. He is very strong, he is very smart, he is very organised, he is the most of everything.
Yeah.
And that's why he's the one who can beat Batman.
He is the main Bane.
Yeah.
But yeah, this isn't the comic book's fault. It's my fault, and it's Hollywood's fault. But every time that not every time, sorry. When I was reading the first special, I just kept thinking of Bane in Batman and Robin. Just kept thinking how terrible that was.
Yeah.
And that guaranteed, is it Joel Schumacher at that point? I don't know. Mm-hmm. He clearly not picked up this comic and not even looked at the history of Bane and thought, right, I need a big guy who's strong and got a mask. Yeah, I'll do Bane. Yeah, right.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they could have made it Amygdala, for instance, who is a big, strong, dumb guy.
Yeah, he's just a brute, isn't he?
But that would require more than 5 minutes of research.
But yeah, anyway. Your take on Bane? I mean, I'm assuming you've read this before.
I have read this before, and I've read what comes afterwards as well. I like him. I think he's sort of got that scheming, calculated, well-trained, speaks several languages, all of these things just to show, look, this is the guy who's going to beat up Batman. And yeah, he's the best of the best. The problem with that is you haven't really got anywhere to go with it afterwards.
Yeah.
So in the follow-up to this story, he gets beaten, obviously, because he's, that's superhero stories, and taken in. And obviously, since then, there's been 30 years more story.
Yeah.
25. And obviously, he's never quite lived up to that thing. And the same thing happened with Doomsday, actually. When the thing that you're most known for is your first ever appearance, then it's all downhill from there.
Yeah.
So you're never going to reach those heights again. I know they've recently done something with Bane. I won't say what for spoiler reasons, but they recently did something with him to have another greater impact on Batman's life. Mm-hmm. He did something else.
Right. Is that out of the new 52?
No, this is subsequent to that. This is much more recently.
Oh, okay.
So something big happened in recent comics, but to make Bane a primary antagonist again, because in the comics he did sort of become the big dumb brute, almost in a way.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because he has a lot more going for him, but he's not as perhaps as interesting as some of Batman's other foes. He's not got a real gimmick. His thing was breaking the Batman. He did that. In fact, my favourite rendition of Bane is from Secret Six, which we've talked about on the show several times.
Your favourite.
I've recommended it several times. It takes a lot of traits from what we see here with the intelligence and all of this, but it also adds a little bit of vulnerability to the character whilst still very much keeping him on the villainous side of good and evil.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a main member of the Secret Six. That's a really well-rounded take on the character. If you want to follow up to this and you want to read more about Bane, I'd say go read that. But that's that's getting off topic.
Yeah, cool. Something that I don't think we've actually spoken that much about is the Bat himself.
This is the problem with Batman. In many of Batman's stories, Batman is not the most interesting thing about it, especially the films. Yeah.
But yeah, this comic, I was reading it, and like certain issues and certain points, I just kept thinking of Sin City and more precisely Hartigan. So there are points that Batman is hurt, he's injured, he's just trying to soldier on, and he's using this, well, I'm perceiving it as this kind of hard, gruff kind of voice of him going, right, no, you're in pain, it's not about you, it's about him, it's about taking him down, I've got to keep on going, otherwise I'm dead, that's it.
Yeah.
Which I like that take on it. It's not I don't think I've ever read a Batman comic that he's having to will himself on and having to, like, he thinks he's the only one. Obviously, this is coming off the back of the death of Jason Todd, which this makes me want to read Death and Family, which I actually have on my shelf and not read.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so it's the idea of it that this is the third Robin at this point, I'm assuming. So
This is, Tim Drake. Mm-hmm.
So we've not really seen this character before, or I've not seen this character where he just doesn't want anyone's help. From what I've watched and what I've seen online and stuff, he was very unhappy about extending his crime-fighting family. But then, he gets the Robin, the first one, he then goes on. Second one then dies. The third one he's now got, but he doesn't want to use him because he's scared for his life. And he's too much of a prick to be like, no, I'm scared you'll get hurt. I'm going in on my own. It's just, you stay here.
Yeah, he's very protective of Tim Drake after what happened to Jason Todd.
Yeah.
And he's, Batman's almost always had a Robin. Robin came about in like issue 50 of Detective Comics or something like that. It's proper early on. It's like when we talk about Spider-Man and we talked about the early years when he was in school. Well, that was about 3 comics or something, or like 12 comics. And after that, he was off being an adult in the world. So yeah, it wasn't really a time that existed. It's much more of an Ultimate Spider-Man thing, but yeah. So I always like dynamic between Robins and Batman, whoever that Robin is. I think it's one of the more interesting dynamic, and it's one that's not really been explored on screen, apart from a little bit in Batman Forever. But yeah, not quite the same.
Especially how Chris O'Donnell was playing a teenager, and he's clearly 35.
Yeah, I didn't understand. Was he meant to be a teenager in that?
I don't know. I don't care. I've not watched those films in ages.
You never really had the fatherly Bruce that you get here.
Yeah.
The fatherly protective, but you never really get that in the films or the TV. And it just is it's another facet to Bruce Wayne or Batman that I think is sometimes missing from the live action adaptation of these things, because they just have a strong, smart, capable, brooding, sometimes mentally scarred character. And it's just the same thing over and over and over again. So having an extra level.
Yeah.
And in some cases with Damien, literally his son, so it's quite a nice dynamic to widen that character out.
Yeah. What I did also like, actually, and saw in several of the issues, is like his tech. So it's something that does come up in a lot of comics, and, he's very smart and got all this sort of stuff. But I liked that he's got the night vision built into his cowl. And all he does, he just taps the side of it and it's on. I like the way that they're not afraid of him to use tech in this, but the tech that uses it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not, like we've said before, it's not the stupid spray with the shark. I know that was just daft. It's stuff that you think that you would use, and the fact that all he's got to do is just tap there and it's on, rather than having to go into his bag or whatever and do something and fuck around, gets stabbed. But yeah, I do like the fact that they do include a bunch of his tech in this that makes sense.
Yeah. And I like that they show him using it in different ways as well. Like, I like in the fight scene towards the end where he takes his cloak off and sort of throws it up at the end. The guy thinks it's Batman, so he stabs it.
Yeah.
And then he creeps up on him and beats him up from behind. I think stuff like that just shows that even though Batman's got the tech, it's Bruce Wayne is the only one that can do it.
Yeah.
So that's one thing you noticed. Did you notice anything else in this comic?
Oh, well, I may have done, and also may have noticed a few things in the film as well.
They call him the Noticer.
Every goddamn time.
Right, play the music then. Iain's egg hunt. Iain's egg hunt. Iain's egg hunt.
I'm not yoking you. Well, something else that I also noticed in the comic, it's not really an egg, it's just something that I saw and I thought was quite amusing. There's a paper in the comic called The Optimistic Times, which isn't really an egg, but it's just a fitting title for a paper in Gotham.
Yeah, it tells you what you need to know about Gotham, doesn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to some proper eggs, I guess.
Fry them up, baby.
Right, so we had a conversation in either Batman Begins or The Dark Knight, I think it was Dark Knight, about people grasping at names. There was the Mr. Reese kind of link.
Yep.
That people are like, oh, Mr. Reese,
yes.
That's the Riddler. In this, I think this is more of a nod than the fact that this character will become him. But you've got Ben Mendelsohn's character of John Daggett, which, as I said, could be a nod to the character in the animated series, but his name's not John, it's Roland, who becomes Clayface.
Right, yeah. Could be.
So, yeah, it's a little bit... I think it's a little bit more of a nod than a Mr. Reese.
Maybe.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar name. Maybe a son or something, perhaps, but who knows?
But yeah, that name, that's not Clayface's name in the comics, apparently.
It's actually been a few Clayfaces in the comics, hasn't there?
Yeah, there's been quite a few, but the animated series is the only one that's used that particular name.
Right. So it probably is a coincidence then.
Damn it. But yeah, so talking about other characters, there's a mention of a giant alligator in the sewers.
Yes.
Which, I mean, that's got to be a clear head tilt to the old Killer Croc.
Head tilt, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that one is.
Yeah, you agree with me.
I think that's the only one of these. The other one that people said about, will it defend me from dogs? And they said it might help with cats or something like that. And everyone's like, oh, that means Catwoman. It's a joke.
I said that. I said that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Still angry about it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Over a year later.
I would be too as well. Something that I did also see in the Masquerade scene, Bruce and Miranda, there you go, that's her name. You didn't know her name earlier on.
Miranda Tate, yes.
They're the only two to not wear masks there. This obviously was a clear thing that Christopher Nolan did because their personas are their masks.
Yes.
So, Bruce is obviously the Bat, and you've got Miranda, obviously, is Talia al Ghul.
Yes. No, that's clever, isn't it? I like that.
Yeah, and tonight we are recording this on the 13th of February.
We are indeed.
So tonight is the Super Bowl. As we are Super Bowl fans, we will be watching this. We'll go from the dark night to a late night. But
it's good.
Yeah, good. Yeah. That I didn't even plan that. I just off the top of my head.
I can tell.
But when Bane goes to blow up the stadium, just before he does, there's a kicker called Ravenstall, and I might be saying that name wrong, but that is a cameo from the mayor of Pittsburgh, who also was a kicker for his college team.
Oh, right.
And the reason that he was used is because they used Pittsburgh Steelers Stadium to film it in.
Right.
Which may also explain why the Gotham Rogues are black and yellow.
I thought that was a reference to Batman, because obviously those are Batman's main colours.
Could be, yeah, could be both. But yeah, they also used a bunch of the Steelers players as the Rogues and the other team. And probably a bunch, if not all of those players on the field are actual real players.
Yeah.
I won't go through the list. I had a list, but I took it off.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to read player names that I can't say.
You're just going to, sit here and list NFL players for a while.
Here's some names. Yeah, here's some names. But yeah, well, that's it for my eggs. However, I was very intrigued by the amount of foreshadowing in this film. We've already brought up a couple things, but we were talking about the sort of twist and the play on the fact that Bane's not the child and Talia is.
Yes.
But Bane says to Batman,
"You think the darkness is your ally. You merely adopted the dark. I was born into it, molded by it. I didn't see the light till I was merely a man."
There you go.
Very good.
You do Sean Connery, I do Bane.
Very nearly.
But this was foreshadowing that it couldn't have been him that came out of the pit, because if he's saying he was a man, then it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
However, as I was writing that up, I did think about, you could stand at the bottom and just look up. You could just see, you could see a light from the sky if you look up.
Yeah.
There you go.
Maybe that was, who knows? I think it's a figure of speech, perhaps, rather than literal.
Then she's sort of seen the sort of sky, if you will. And
yeah.
But yeah, also, Gordon says to Foley, he's not expecting him to put on his blues and to walk down the streets.
Yeah, in his dress uniform.
And then that's pretty much what happens, is that all the cops get into their blues and walk on the streets, and then it leads into that last kind of fight scene.
Foley. That's one we could have cut. You could have cut Foley. That's one character you didn't need.
There we go.
We found him.
Yeah, and just thought I'd round this off with some interesting points. The graveyard scene for where Bruce passes away, and it's very, very sad. Bruce's name wasn't actually on the grave. It was Tate's, so they put her name on the grave, not his. Also, Christian Bale was actually on set the day that they filmed that, so in case anything leaked about it's a graveyard scene and blah blah, he was there.
Oh, nice.
Which I thought was quite clever.
Yeah, it's like how Robert Downey Jr. was at his own funeral as well, wasn't he? In Avengers, whatever it is, Endgame.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
He was there for filming that as well. Yeah.
And actually something that we put into our intro to try and portray a little bit of humour about the Riddler. Apparently Warner Bros. Wanted Christopher Nolan to bring in the Riddler into this film, and they wanted him to be played by Leonardo DiCaprio.
Right, okay.
But apparently Christopher put his foot down and said, no, like I've already got enough
Yeah.
in this film.
Far too much.
Leave me alone.
And Christopher Nolan had worked with Leonardo DiCaprio already as well, and he likes to use the same actors, but
Yeah, where you've got, was it him and Tate Bane in Inception?
Yeah.
There you go.
right. Okay then. Well, that's very nice, delicious Easter eggs. Just in time for Easter, nearly, kind of. Right.
Oh, well.
But let's get back to the conclusion and wrap things up for now. So, the film, the comic, what are your thoughts overall?
So we'll do film first then. So a little bit overstuffed, I would say, but a satisfying way to end the trilogy.
Yep.
I mean, we've already sort of covered the majority of it. Your thoughts on the film?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like about The Dark Knight Rises, more than I remember.
Yeah.
Yes, it's overstuffed, overlong, and honestly, in parts, pretty silly. But I think it achieves what Nolan sets out to do, which is to wrap up his Batman trilogy.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth watching, even if it's not as good as the others in the trilogy.
Yeah. And the comic I thought was really, really good. I'm glad that we agreed to read Bane's backstory.
Yep.
Otherwise, I feel that some of his character interactions would have been lost on me if I hadn't done. And what were your thoughts on the comic then?
I think it's okay. It's very fun. You get a smorgasbord of different villains, some well-known, some less so. Batman fights them all, and then he gets his back snapped. It's a little bit throwaway.
Yeah.
If you've read things like No Man's Land, or you've read, even The Long Halloween, where lots of people show up and Batman encounters them, it's something you may have seen before. But I think for what it was intended for, which is a way to shake up the status quo, it certainly does that. If you want a good, fun Batman comic, there are probably better alternatives out there. But it's certainly not a bad one to start with if you want a good variety of all the villains and things like that. If it's Bane in particular you're interested in, obviously this is the one to read, though.
Yeah.
And then The Secret Six.
Of course. But yeah, I think it's something that I will definitely keep reading. In the issue that we've got, the big old thick book, I've got the rest of those story arcs, I think, downstairs. I can't find it. No, it's not. It's right here. Yeah, so I didn't actually say this earlier on. Where we stopped on issue 12, I think it was, not what it's called, but we stop at the point where the Bat's back is then
Broken, yeah.
Yeah. So we stopped reading at the exact halfway point of the film.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So the rest of the film still plays out, and then we've like, well, we've just read that.
Well, we probably should have read No Man's Land for the rest of the film.
Yeah, that would probably make more sense.
Yeah, first half of the film is Knightfall. The second half of the film is No Man's Land with Bane. But yeah.
There you go.
And what was Kate's opinion of the film?
Really short and sweet. Yeah, good.
Yeah, pretty accurate. Fair enough.
I did think that she might get a bit bored with it because, like we said before, she's not intrigued by fight scenes.
Right.
But there's not that many proper fight scenes that are too long in this. It's not like punch, 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 block, punch. It's like there's bits with there's him and Bane and whatever, but they're quite short, and there is some speech in the middle of it, so it's not just pure action.
Well, also they have a dramatic purpose, is what I find about good fight scenes and good action films. The fight scenes have a reason for being there. It's not just to pad the film out.
Yeah.
So I think it uses them well. But yeah. So that's it for The Dark Knight Rises and Knightfall. Any other business?
Just something real quick. Now we've covered the whole trilogy out of order because that's just what we do.
Oh, yeah.
What would you say is your favourite film out of these three?
Right.
I can assume your answer, but go on.
Well, I think my favourite is actually Batman Begins. The Dark Knight, I think, is actually the better film, structurally, but I've got a lot of fondness for origin stories. I really like Batman Begins. I like that, seeing the birth of Batman and all the little gadgets and stuff coming together. And I really like Scarecrow and Cillian Murphy's portrayal of that. So yeah, I would go for Batman Begins. Yourself?
I don't know. I thought you would say The Dark Knight, and then I would have said Batman Begins just to shake it up a bit. I honestly thought that you would have said number 2, not number 1. I think when I first saw them, I would probably say Batman Begins, because like you said, it's an origin story. It's quite enjoyable to see how this character is made and then progresses through his life. But I think when I go back to rewatch them, I think I enjoy The Dark Knight more. Because, I mean, an origin story to me is you see how they become this character. Once you've seen it, you're kind of like, well, I don't really need to see it again.
See, I love the start of a journey. I love the beginnings.
Cool. And one quick last question then, just before we do wrap things up, is, I mean, you did just say one of them there, but what's your favourite Batman bad guy from these films? And I don't just mean the big bad. I mean anyone who does come up in this film, like Scarecrow, Two-Face, you got the Joker, you got all sorts, really.
Yeah. I really like Cillian Murphy's Scarecrow. I think it's a character that wasn't done on screen before as well, so that was fun and unique to see, even though some of the versions we've got of other characters are not particularly accurate. I mean, obviously, there's some really great performances. I like Bane's performance. I like, obviously, Heath Ledger's is great. But yeah, I'm going to stick with Scarecrow, I think. What about yourself?
He's the only one that's appeared in all 3 films.
He is.
Yeah, so I don't know really with these ones, because I don't want to be cliche, but Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker is, that will go down in history. Like that's one of the best performances of a bad guy ever. No, I mean in a comic book kind of world. Kind of wish that we'd got more of Scarecrow in the sequels. It sort of crops up for a bit, and then that's him gone.
Yeah, he doesn't even really have a resolution in this one.
Yeah,
at least in the second one, he's arrested. But yeah,
it's just kind of there, and then that's it. Done.
I kind of feel like that role might have, I don't know, was that intended for Joker? It seemed more Jokerly to do something like that for me. But obviously maybe it was rewritten. I don't know.
I think I will say Joker.
I think it's perfectly valid. Yeah, it's a really good performance.
Really enjoy it. It is sad that he passed on, and also I do like that out of respect they don't say anything about that in the film. I think they don't say his name. They don't try to recast him. They don't go, well, this was the plan from before, so now it's the plan now. Like, it's a brand new story, and Christopher Nolan did a great job in continuing the story without having to sort of hide things away.
Yeah, and you can just say he's still in Arkham and leave it at that. You don't need to say any more.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Any other questions you want to throw at me? You don't have to think of them if you don't.
Where's the trigger? Where's the trigger?
I don't know.
That's it.
Great. Well, thank you for that. I will see you later today for Super Bowl.
You will indeed.
In the meantime, that's all for this episode. Thank you very much for listening. You can get in touch with us on Twitter at becometheteapot or through most other social doohickeys. And don't forget to subscribe on your preferred listening platform for all of our upcoming episodes. Episodes such as our next one, in which we'll be discussing The Losers. No, it's not an inside look at our personal lives. But instead, it's the 2010 action film based on the comic of the same name by Andy Diggle and Jock.
Hey, I recognise those names. Listen to next episode to find out why.
Loser? I hardly knew her. And now I've got nothing for you to say.
That's all right.